Aloha, and welcome to Voices for Change. I'm Lyla Berg, host for this program. Voices for Change is an opportunity for community members to share issues of concern that affect all of us statewide. In the past, you've heard our guests talk about damages to sacred, historic, and cultural sites. We've also talked to guests about the tension that exists between agricultural lands and development and water rights, and our youth have also spoken to us about the need to be heard. Today's guest, I'm very happy to introduce to you, is going to be talking to us about something that runs underneath all of the decisions that need to be made in Hawaii in a way that's pono. And I'm happy to introduce and welcome you, Makana, to be on our program. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, Lyla.
So please share us a little bit about who you are. Most recently, you've become known nationally, and you have some issues that you wanted to share with us.
Well, I'm born and raised on Oahu. I grew up in Palisades, and at a very young age started performing, singing with the Honolulu Boy Choir, playing ukulele, and then began learning the art of kiho'alu, Hawaiian slack key guitar, at 11 with Bobby Madero and Raymond Kane, and then eventually Sonny Chillingworth. And I got deeper into playing music and started to learn other styles and became professional at 14. So my life has been focused on music and art and poetry, and from there expanded to utilize that gift to inspire people to face their fears, inspire people to engender a deeper awareness, and to, in that awareness, order their values so it serves them.
And in that process, you've learned and grown as well and become very passionate about specific issues.
I have. My passion is about notifying people that their options are often being limited without them knowing. That's what I call oppression, is when it may not be obvious, the senses may not pick it up, but limiting of options is happening every day. And eventually, I mean, it's a form of violence, basically. And eventually what happens is the person wakes up and they have no options. And they don't know who to blame or where to look. Who's the assailant? Who's the one causing this? And some of them leave the planet without ever knowing that. And so my passion is to use my art to point those things out and to create and make available other perspectives that can inspire people to think deeper on the issues that affect them.
Most recently, you've inspired many people to think differently and deeply. And if you'll allow us to play a B-roll right now,
sure.
I'd like the audience to know how you've become more nationally recognized. So let's have a look. Most recently, Makana was performing, and let's have a look now at what CNN has to say.
So far, though, the summit hasn't gone entirely according to plan. Last night, during the gala dinner, a Hawaiian guitarist used the spotlight to draw attention, well, to a different agenda.
An incredible experience.
The guitarist Makana opened his suit jacket to reveal a t-shirt that reads, "Occupy with Aloha," an apparent show of support for the Occupy movements unfolding across the U.S. and other parts of the world. He also sang a protest ballad instead of just strumming his guitar for background music. Well, as was expected, Makana comes to us now live from Honolulu. Thanks so much for being with us. You're wearing the t-shirt, you've got the guitar. But tell me, first of all, what were you thinking? I mean, why did you do it?
I think the real question is, why wouldn't I have done it? It felt like the right song to sing. I wrote it with the intention of people in power hearing it.
It always makes me laugh. I mean, what comes to mind when I watch that is how we look at authority. You know, there's this general climate of, you know, respect authority, and if something comes along that looks like authority, it's usually wearing a costume. Then we change our behavior, and we get afraid. We tend to stop thinking, tend to agree. And I don't necessarily look at authority like that. I think authority must always be questioned. I mean, there are many, many, many scientific experiments that have shown that people can be influenced to behave in ways that they would never behave in once they recognize an authoritative figure. And when you deal with the media and the news, people think, oh, that's authority too. But I tend to deal with it in a very light manner because they're just people and they're just doing their job. And it reminds me always of that classic story by Hans Christian Andersen, The Emperor's New Clothes, my all-time favorite story. And there's a reason why it's a classic story. And it's quite valid in many, many realms today of society.
Well, I was thinking about that just recently too. There are many people walking around in Hawaii not knowing they don't have clothes on. And metaphorically, what I'm suggesting is that this program really brings to light the specific concerns that people have in communities regarding overdevelopment or traffic patterns and quality of life being compromised. Those of us who grew up in Hawaii are deeply concerned that change has to happen, of course. Change does just happen. But we want to be able to guide it in a way that's in the best interest of the most number of people, and especially our children, and that's doing it correctly in Pono. So when we've been talking recently, you mentioned that you're very well aware of what's really going on underneath some of the decisions that are being made, besides old thinking. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Well, I mean, if you forget all of the education that we've received through schooling and media and whatnot, and you look at what is, like if you're an alien just landing here, you would look at Hawaii, it's the most isolated landmass in the world, and it's completely dependent on other places. And yet it's also in the Tropic of Cancer. It's got like the best climate you could ask for. You can grow food year round. Why is it that, a place that is so abundant in natural resource is so in poverty, really essentially in poverty, meaning it's so dependent on help from the outside world. And for that help, it pays an astronomical price. And the answer to that is a system that works to monopolize resource by monopolizing the currency. And it's a system that most of the industrialized world is agreed to, and now nations that are just becoming industrialized are being put into through the IMF and the World Bank. And essentially what it is instead of having an economy based on actual value, what's real, food, land, things like this, the economy is based on the agreement to the value of a system of capital or currency or money as we call it. That money is created by a private banking system. And without going into too much detail of it, when we talk about change in Hawaii and how can we guide that change, well, we really can't guide the change when everyone agrees that this capital is of highest value, and it is of higher value than our cultural values. It's of higher value than the health of our families. It's of higher value than availability of food and clean, renewable resource and energy. It's of higher value than all that. That's the agreement going on now. That's the emperor's new clothes. It's just cotton paper. I mean, the fact it's printed on cotton paper is a whole nother scam. It should be on hemp. But when you look at that, then you say, well, how can we free Hawaii? And people talk about sovereignty. They talk about all these issues about use of land and stuff. Well, you're dealing with a society that, the massive society, is conditioned to a certain way of thinking. Not only do they say, okay, well, I can't survive without this thing we call money, which factually, looking at Hawaii, we absolutely can, and Hawaiians arguably did for centuries. Other than that, it's the value system. It's what else do people place value on? Well, they place value on owning a home. Let's talk about home ownership in Hawaii. I don't own a home. Why do I not own a home? I can afford to own a home. I don't own a home because I don't look at the land right now as something to be owned. I look at the land that owns us. I look at how things are being developed and say, oh, everybody needs home, everybody needs that. What's going on is it's not everybody needs a home. It's that the developers and that whole mentality, they need to create work for themselves. And rather than looking at the bigger picture, say, well, we can go and retrofit homes. We can go and create more renewable ways of operating our homes that are sustainable. They go in and just want to build and build and build. What doing this is it drives the market to a place that is unaffordable by the average person. And it's the result of valuing that short-term profit. So everyone becomes a victim. The developers become a victim. The potential home buyers become a victim. People who already own lands, the Hawaiians, become a victim because they cannot afford the property taxes. They lose their land. it victimizes everyone in the long term and sometimes the short term until people start to disagree from that money system. And they say, our relationship's more valuable than that. The aina is more valuable than that. Let's create a system that excludes that money system, and let's create a community system where we exchange value for real things. You have certain trade that you're good at, I'll exchange it for this service. Let's do how it's more of a barter economy based on real value. You know, bringing back the value of producing here in Hawaii where we can. But that's the core issue: is where do you place your value?
So when you speak about this, what comes to my mind is the ahapua'a system.
Mm-hmm.
And it's become a very popular slogan, if you will, vocabulary word, you know, from mountain to ocean and interdependency. You're talking about a huge fundamental shift and a belief that we can survive without the dependence on such monopolies,
Mm-hmm.
on capitalism. You mentioned the word monopoly before. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, first of all, to address what you said, it is a fundamental shift, and it has to be, because otherwise what I'm addressing is a short-term fix. I mean, the way that the money system works, it creates mass amounts of credit, mass amounts of availability of credit. It allows people to, of course, increase their standard of living and go and acquire and acquire and acquire. But in that acquiring, at some point, the money system contracts itself. It starts to allow credit to become unavailable to people, and it starts to remove capital from the markets. And when it does that, the whole climate changes. The value of things never really changes, but the perceived value goes up, and it crushes people. Yeah, and you've seen this in the Great Depression. You're seeing it now with mortgages and whatnot. People talk about the economy like it's some sort of like the weather. Oh, well, how's the economy going to be? Or check the surf. You know,
it'll come back.
It's not like that. It's being manipulated.
No.
So for us to talk about, you know, bringing about the ahupua'a system back or any of these things, I mean, that kind of mentality, people think, oh, you know, that's ancient. We can't go back to that. Well, what is life or death matter right now is we have, you know, 3 to 4 days of food, you know, not including the military, but we have 3 to 4 days of food available on the island. You know, we're very dependent. It's a very vulnerable place, and people are going out buying luxury cars and going on vacations, doing all these things. Where's the priority system here? So why is it like that? Why is it that we have so much abundance of resource? We have so much technology. We have such brilliant minds in the world creating solutions, and yet we're so vulnerable. We're like 3 days away from starvation and chaos. Well, there's a reason: because of monopolies. Again, it's the monopoly on the money system. It's a monopoly on, I mean, in Hawaii, it's monopoly on the shipping system. That's a whole nother issue, you know. But it's about control. It's about control. And so what I wanted to talk about today was the root issue of what the average person, their view of life. And then we can talk about what can be done. But it's the view of life. And when we grow up, we get put into an education system that teaches us to think in a binary system of right and wrong. You know, what's the right answer? If you find the right answer, we'll reward you. You get to go to a better school. You're going to make more money. You're going to live better if you can tell us what the right answer is. We already decided what the answer is. You just have to figure it out.
And you can't share the answer with anybody else.
That's competition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, I'm not completely against competition. That's another issue. But, you know, so the system teaches you not how to think. It teaches you what to think. It doesn't teach people critical thinking. It doesn't challenge people to create solutions so much as it asks them to agree to the solutions that are presented to them. This is a handicap that happens. And so we think, what are you going to be when you grow up? What job are you going to do? You know, like the painting outside, you know, think about your future. It has the doctor and the fireman and stuff. Well, things are a little more complicated than that. You know, like I look at my role as critically analyzing these systems. Do they serve people? It appears that the systems, in order for them to stay in power, have to serve just enough people. As long as they serve enough people, there won't be a revolution. People won't come out with, you know, guns and pickaxes and start attacking each other. But when the system stops serving enough people, that's when something happens. So the question to ask yourself is am I happy being in a system that might serve me and my friends, but it doesn't serve these millions of people? Like, look, in today, you know, there's a quarter of the children in America on food stamps. What's up with that, you know? how many unemployed? Well, way more than they say unemployed, millions and millions. So this is a system that doesn't work for everybody.
And children dying every single day
Yeah.
of hunger.
Yeah, 17,000.
17,000.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I think it comes down to this, like when I'm on Facebook and I'm posting things every day, it's like, why do I take the time to do this? Why is it a concern to me? It's not affecting me. I don't starve. I have plenty of food and clothes and a beautiful place to live. But it's the empathic awareness that comes back down to the cultural value of aloha. It's realizing that I cannot be at peace when my fellow person is completely suffering. Do I have a solution? Can I take that suffering away? No, I cannot do that either. I can't remove their suffering. But I can draw attention to it. I can contribute in some way. And until we become more empathic, until we start to realize, wow, there is so much suffering in the world, and these systems are in power that are causing suffering for people, and they're benefiting a minority. And we agree to the system. We're a part of the system. We're a part of this system that values money over relationships, values money over, all these other real value things. And in essence, we are slaves because we don't control the value of that. We all say, this bowl is, worth it. We value this bowl. And then 1 or 2 people, or actually 13 people in Switzerland say, oh, well, we'll determine the value of that bowl. Now, that to me doesn't seem very democratic, as people like to claim they live in a democracy.
Socially just, or considering the greater good?
Not at all. And that's not a consideration. And I think if we want to address, we talk about politicians, bankers, all these people who appear in the public to not consider the public good, we have to first look at ourselves. Are we considering the public good? And what are we doing? In my own music, in my own realm, I've made a lot of choices to reflect my value system. I never signed with a major label. I had many offers, and there was a reason why I refused to sign with a major label. It was because I would lose control of my art. In that essence, losing control of my art meant that the messages I wanted to put out through my art could be tainted. They could be changed or manipulated or removed altogether. To have great success and have everybody like a song I wrote, but the song not to do anything to bring about inspiration for people in the way that I envisioned it, would be a total failure in my mind. So I made personal sacrifices and choices to reflect that.
Now, you've had mentors in your life. Part of what this program is about is offering people what they can do to make the shifts in their own life. What you're talking about, personal shift, so then the choices become different. And for their family, and then their role models for their children and so forth. You've had mentors, you've had guidance. We also talk in this program about building alliances and getting ourselves informed. One thought that you might have to offer somebody on what they can do if anything you say in this program touches them?
Well, the first thing you can do is try to start growing your own food. I mean, aside from all of the heady concepts that we're talking about, there's nothing more important or of more value than to create food, period. And that's something I've got into for the past 1.5 years. I'm a huge fan of aquaponics systems, and I'm a huge advocate of growing food. I'm growing food myself, both in soil and in water, and raising fish. And I enjoy trading food with friends who also do the same. And there is a big war against that by the federal government right now. And it's really important for more people to start doing it. Number one, because of the food security issues we brought up. But number two, because the more people do it, the more difficult it would be for the federal government to control. And the reason why there's a war against it is because the mega agricultural firms want to have a monopoly on food production. And that's a whole nother conversation. But the one thing people can do is start to grow their own food or support local farmers, support local producers. And I go and play at the farmers markets and try to put the word out that way too. Another thing people can do is start to question authority. Thinking is what happens before you take action. And the thinking is what needs to happen right now. People need to start to realize that they are being controlled and manipulated. That there's a reason why there is so much inequity in the world. And it's not because we just can't figure out a solution, it's that the solutions are being suppressed. So they have to become the solution. There's a lot of that happening here. I mean, Ma'o Farms is a classic example of becoming the solution. But then you look at, one thing I'd like to point out is when the President and the First Lady were here and Mrs. Obama went to visit Ma'o Farms, that was very insulting for me because under the Obama administration, Tom Vilsack, who's like the czar of agriculture in America, legalized all sorts of GMO crops. And not only that, but there is massive taxpayer-funded subsidies for these genetically modified crops. Now, anyone who is educated understands that genetically modified foods render organics obsolete. They will infect them and they will become the intellectual property of these agricultural firms. So that's a good example I'd like to point out of false PR. It's propaganda. It's going and shaking hands and smiling for the camera when in essence, the agreements that were made and backed by law are allowing for the destruction of organics.
And I think there are also local pieces of legislation that are coming up in our local legislature that the public can be paying attention to. There are organizations that help bring awareness to this. And in the last few minutes of this program, I'm going to ask you if you would sing your message.
Sure.
But in closing prior to that, in addition to growing and encouraging people and inspiring them to just pay attention and get into action, one last thought that you might have.
Well, I think it's a false assumption to say, you know, oh, I'm not interested in politics or that doesn't affect me. I mean, that line of thinking is absolutely flawed. I made a joke the other day. I put, oh, did you hear the new law they passed? Everything is illegal. And again, what I said about limiting options is unless you're just a vigilante who doesn't follow the law, it does affect you. These laws affect you. They limit your options. So you must get involved.
Thank you so much. We can keep talking for hours and hours, and I hope you'll come back on the program again. Thank you very much for sharing your mana'o and your thoughts. And I'm Lyla Berg. You've been listening to Makana, and we've been talking about how you too can make changes in yourself and in Hawaii and really help us move toward a kind of Hawaii where we are not only proud, but we can feel comfortable that our children will be taken care of. And now, Makana, thank you for singing for us.
Sure.
Thank you for joining us. This is Voices for Change. I'm Lyla Berg, and this is Makana.
This is called We Are the Many. Ye come here, gather round the stage. The time has come for us to voice our rage against the ones who trapped us in a cage, to steal from us the value of our wage, from underneath the vesture of law. The lobbyists at Washington do not. At liberty, the bureaucrats guffaw. And until they are purged, we won't withdraw. We'll occupy the streets, we'll occupy the courts, we'll occupy the offices of you, till you do the bidding of the many, not the few. You enforce your monopolies with guns, while sacrificing our daughters and sons. But certain things belong to everyone. Your thievery has left the people none. So take heed of our notice to redress. We have little to lose, we must confess. Your empty words do leave us unimpressed. A growing number join us in protest. We occupy the streets, we occupy the courts,